My name is Ted Harbach, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm alive tonight and sober by the very special grace of a loving God and the loving program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thank God that I'm an alcoholic, and if you're a newcomer, why, that'll make you want to puke. Certainly did me the first time I heard it. But I thank God that I'm an alcoholic, and if you don't understand how somebody can stand up at one of these podiums and say that, why, you haven't been working a program. I just pray to God you can keep coming back until you can understand that. I'd like to thank Dan and the committee for inviting me down here. It was only about 65 degrees on the coast this morning when I left. So if I get a little warmed up in the middle of my speech, well, you'll know why. I'd like to thank Steve and Sharon for picking me up at the airport and being wonderful host and hostess to me. And they took me out to dinner tonight, and that was great. And it was delightful to see my old friend Howard Polans and his wife from Los Angeles. And of course, I got another little hostess, too. Her name's Deborah, and I want to thank her because she's kind of special. And I want to thank Frank from the church for saying what he said. And I'm not sure that you really understood what he said. But what he said represented one of the greatest accolades that I've ever heard paid to the membership of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because he said, what he said was that his experience with you people was that you have had a spiritual awakening, which is a personality change. And I can promise you that nobody from any church could have said anything like that before we got to AA. Thank you. Of course, there wouldn't be any church here for him to say it in if we'd been here before. Kind of reminds me of one time I was at the Palm Springs Roundup in California, and one of the bartenders said, "My God, never seen people drink so damn much coffee in my life." I said, "Well, you better thank God they're drinking coffee." He said, "Why is that? They don't spend much on tips." I said, "Well, if they were all drinking booze, Palm Springs would run out. And then they would get resentful. And when a group the size of ours gets resentful, you would not have any more Palm Springs." This all seems like get another pot. The only other accolade that I ever heard other than tonight that was greater than the one I heard tonight was when, and I was just reminded of it, was when we had a memorial service for a man that was very dear to me by the name of Eddie Reagan. And Father Terry was holding court that night as the MC. And he called up a number of people that told how Eddie Reagan had affected their lives. And at the end of the whole deal, Terry called on a little girl. And it was Eddie Reagan's daughter. And she stood up in front of the podium with tears streaming down her face. And she said this, quote, "I want to thank all of you members of Alcoholics Anonymous and the program for having given back my father." My God, what a deal. What a deal. You people here tonight are the most fortunate people in the entire world. Howard and I are talking about that at dinner tonight. The chances of an alcoholic recovering from the terminal progressive disease of alcoholism without any program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the chances are just about absolutely nil. Just about zero. Dr. Young said that he had heard of a couple that had kind of gotten struck sober by some sort of a spiritual awakening or spiritual intervention. So we're the luckiest people in the world today. And we got a deal here in Alcoholics Anonymous that I believe, because of the experiences that I've had and the things that I've seen, I believe it's the greatest gift that God ever gave to mankind. And if the word God bothers you, why, use whatever you want. Because it won't bother me. We got the greatest deal that ever came along. I didn't know why I drank alcohol for a long time. Of course, I knew how it made me feel, but I found out recently really why I drank alcohol, and it's because of the promises in this big book. So I happened to run into a couple of characters on AA, and one of them's name is Joe, and I ran into him in Montreal. He was the spiritual speaker on Sunday morning. Joe was the first black member of Alcoholics Anonymous in the state of Arkansas. 26, 7 years ago, something like that. He's got his program of AA in 7 prisons back there now. I talked to him a week ago Sunday, and he said the attrition rate of the prisoners that have gone through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, as they've put it together, the normal attrition rate or return of released prisoners who've done their time is 65%. And those that have gone through that program, tracking them with deadly precision, for 7 years, the return rate is 12%. And Joe and Charlie do a little seminar deal called Big Book Comes Alive Seminar. And they're doing it 35 times this coming year. And they did it out at Pacific Palisades a number of months ago. And I met them down when I spoke back in Little Rock, Arkansas around Christmas time, and Joe took me through the 12-step house that they put together back there. And then about a week ago, last Tuesday, while they came through L.A. again on their way to Australia, they're going to do that deal 8 times in Australia and 1 time in New Zealand. New Zealand does not have very many alcoholics. But Charlie's the one that explained to me that I drank alcohol because of the 12 promises. So just to get this deal started, I'm going to read the 12 promises on page 83 and 84 in a fashion that maybe none of you have ever heard them read. And this is the way Charlie reads them. And he says this: whenever I drank alcohol, I would know a new freedom and a new happiness. Whenever I drank alcohol, I would not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Whenever I drank alcohol, I would comprehend the word serenity and I would know peace. Whenever I drank alcohol, no matter how far down the scale I'd gone, I could see how my experience could benefit others. Whenever I drank alcohol, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity would disappear. Whenever I drank alcohol, I would lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in my fellows. Whenever I drank alcohol, self-seeking would slip away. Whenever I drank alcohol, my whole attitude and outlook upon life would change. Whenever I drank alcohol, fear of people and economic insecurity would leave me. Whenever I drank alcohol, I would intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me. Whenever I drank alcohol, I would suddenly realize that alcohol was doing for me what I could not do for myself. And is it not a miracle that as a result of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous today, I can experience the exact same feelings that were the feelings that I experienced drinking? I can experience those feelings without drinking alcohol at all. Because it's promised in this big book. And everything in this big book that's promised comes true. Because I've seen it. Promised. And I have to report that almost all of the time today, I feel like I used to feel after about 2 martinis. Doubles. You know that magic place where, I don't know about you, but you sit in that bar and a couple of those cannons would finally take hold and you think, wow, if I could just stay here for the rest of my life, just smooth. But I feel so good now, I wonder a little more might help. Feel extra fantastic. So as a result of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, why we can feel those things. And I didn't always know that. I had a very difficult time with alcoholism because I was born an alcoholic. The reason I know that is the first word my mother said was, "My God, you see how much you drank?" And that was just a harbinger of things to come for the next 39 years. That's all I ever heard. My God, you see how much you drank? I can still get through a 6-pack of Coke as fast as I used to get through a 6-pack of Cutty Sark. You know, I don't understand people that stand up in front of these podiums and say things like, "No, I didn't like the taste of it, and I didn't like the smell of it, and I loved everything about it. I even loved the smell of those bars the next morning, 6 o'clock. A couple early risers there. That's an example of the dedication of a real professional. Now I understand alkies that stand up here and say, "I just didn't like it because it was too strong." My brother used to drive me crazy with that. I'd pour him a nice drink, and he'd look at it, and he'd say, "That's too strong." "Looks all right to me." Here, have another one. I'm always amused at that part of Chapter 3 that says, doctors or medical science has not yet found a way to turn alcoholics of our caliber into normal drinkers. I suspect they're talking about social drinkers. And I don't believe social drinkers should be allowed to drink. I mean, they don't know a damn thing about it, and they waste so much. Just at the time when it starts doing what it's supposed to do, they quit. My secretary used to, after a half a glass of wine, I'd say, "God, why don't you drink the rest of it? You're making me crazy." "Well, if I do, I might get dizzy." Just drink 3, just real fast. You'll go right through dizzy and nauseous and puke and, you know. Like the first time I ever went flying, and I told the guy, I was about 16 years old, and I said, "I think I'm getting a little airsick." And he said, "I'll show you airsick." Snapped it into 5 360-degree rolls, and then we flew upside down, clear up the coast of California. So you're going to get airsick, we're going to be upside down. He said, "If it gets too bad, I'll pull the damn seatbelt loose." I don't know. Social drinkers don't know anything about it. They lose their drinks. Have you ever noticed that? They don't know where they are half the time. I knew where mine was, where yours was, and where they all came from. The only strong drink I ever had was one time I was on a geographic. I didn't know I was on a geographic because I hadn't read this dumb book, and I found myself back in the Ozark Hills of Missouri, where the good old boys are. And one of those good old boys said, would you like a martini?" I said, "Certainly." And he handed me one. Come in a jar about that big around, about that tall. It says Mason on the side of it. And they're so powerful that they put a steel lid on it with a rubber gasket. They're so pure you can see right through it. You know. If I'd known about that stuff when in my early days, I'd only needed 1 tank for my race car. has to keep two, one full of fuel and one full of booze. And one full of booze was up in front of the radiator, and we had it attached to the windshield washer. When things got too hairy, why, you just had that little hose hanging out of your mouth, you know. Everybody thought it was oxygen. Just reach forward and pull a windshield washer knob. 2 ounces straight up. So he gave me this little jar, and I unscrewed the lid, and I threw it away. And he said, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "Well, I was going to believe I'll have a little drink." Hey, but you know, when I first got to AA, and those smarmy old-timers used to say something like, "Put the plug in the jug." All I knew the cork was for was to keep it from spilling until you got it to the car. I took a big, huge blast off that cannon, and it just boiled all the way down and all the way back up. It was fantastic. He jumped back about 4 paces, and he says, "My God, we don't drink it that way." I said, "How do you drink it?" He said, "Well, we cut it with grapefruit juice or something." I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, it's too strong." I said, "Strong hell," and I took another huge charge off that thing, and again, it just boiled all the way down. About halfway back up, I was set free. And about that time, he was back about 8 feet. He was on his knees, had his little hands together, and I thought we were going to have a little prayer of thanksgiving there, and I'm ready to start. And I said, "What's next?" He says, "What's next is you either don't drink it that way or don't smoke." I am just a social smoker, however. I quit smoking using the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then I figured a little light menthol after dinner wouldn't hurt. That was after 3 years. The message is there, folks. Don't think. All my life I felt like an alien on a foreign planet, and nobody had given me the brochure. Till I found booze, and I didn't need it. The alcohol did for me just exactly what those promises said, what I could not possibly do for myself. See, I would have sacrificed my life to keep you from finding out what a terrified little individual lived inside here, and I damn near made it. If you don't identify with my story is the story of a terminal alcoholic who went absolutely as far as you can go on the runaway freight train of alcoholism, and I went one step further like I did with everything. And I almost made it. But all I knew was that when lunch started, I had to go to the bar. I always knew when lunch was going to start because I got a little signal response from my body, and I'd be in the middle of signing something, my pen would fly away. And I knew that if I didn't go to lunch now, I was going to fly away. And isn't anybody going to bring me back? So you go over to that bar, you've been coming in there every day for 10 years, and bartender says, "Hi, what do you have?" Like he doesn't know you, you know. Look at your watch, it only has one hand on it. Alcoholic watch. Say, "Well, I got time for one martini," and as he turns around, you give him the real order, right? Make it a double, put it in an old-fashioned glass, leave out the onion, and no ice. And that way you know you're going to have about 3/8 of freeboard there, so you won't drown this brain surgeon next to you when you try and get it in your face. He's got the flyaways, too. He's trying to get together to do an operation. 10% of the brain surgeons are alcoholics, you know. Finally brings the drink back into an ingenious system of geometric levers while you crank it into your face. And then you say your first 3 or 4 prayers of the day. God, I hope it stays down. God, I hope if it comes up, it's not blood red. God, I hope it works. God, I wish he'd get back. I don't know why they're so interminably slow. Finally, after an eon passes, he reappears out of the ether somewhere, and he says something like, "You have time for another?" You look at your watch, your hand hasn't moved. "You have time for just one more, make it a triple, and hurry up." Yeah, finally, you get that one down, and somewhere in there why magic happens that I've never heard described by a social drinker. Somewhere in there why that cloud of impending doom that you walked into seems to start dissipating, and that God hole in your gut with the wind blowing through it seems to start to heal over, and And you notice it's no longer raining inside your suit. And you notice that hand that was incapable of holding a pen a moment before is just as steady as a rock. And you look at that perfectly synchronized reflection of yourself in that back bar mirror. And, say, Clint Eastwood, you devil. Then you look down at this fighter pilot next to you, you say, what kind of day are you having, craphead? He still knows how to fly, he's just forgotten how to start it. 10% of the fighter pilots are alcoholics. 10% of everybody's an alcoholic. Which reminds me, one of my baby's brothers died the other day down here in Arizona. I think it was Phoenix, and he flew down to get the body. His brother's an alcoholic, and he's giving everybody a hard time. His brother was also a social smoker. And he fell asleep with a cigarette, and he lit himself on fire. And when the neighbor heard him scream, he ran down to see what he could do, and he grabbed a hold of the doorknob, and the doorknob was hot. He ran, got something, and opened up the door, and when he opened the door, my baby's brother was standing there in flames. And that death is going to go down in the medical records as anything but what he died of. He died of terminal alcoholism. Okay. If the death certificates of the people who die were truthful, the ones that died from suicide and cardiac arrest and hypertension and kidney failure and bladder failure and all of the rest of the some 100-odd diseases besides automobile accidents, airplane accidents, and household accidents that kill people, I got to promise you that alcoholism would be far greater than all of the other diseases known to mankind piled together. All of them. So if you're chippying around with this program, why, go get drunk and get serious. Because we're dealing with life and death here. Life and death. It's your life, not mine. Mine's finally in the hands of somebody that I can trust to run it the way it ought to be run. Except on those periodic occasions when I have a little slip and run it myself for a while. Just to keep in practice in case. And then you got to have 3 or 4 more of those shooters real quickly. You got to get back over the office and work like crazy because the cocktail hour's coming. You got to get back over in that bar and where the baby dolls and the big deals are and drink until the traffic clears, 10 o'clock. The bartender can only make a 15-minute drink, and so you drink there for 5 hours, 4 drinks an hour, that's 20 drinks, and now your blood alcohol content's right up there at smooth. And all your merging genes are together. I always thought if you're going to drive, drink. Face traffic with confidence. Your blood alcohol content's right up there around 0.038, you know. Cool. Now you got to only have one problem. Where's my car? Beverly Hills Police Department told me one time if I reported my car stolen one more time, they're going to impound me. You got to drive home real carefully because by now you're probably driving an alcoholic car. You've seen them. They're long and thin. Mine got that way from parking in narrow garages at high speeds. And they've got a lot of other character defects, and you should get that straightened out if you're new because the police departments have been notified that the drivers of these cars are suspect. You know, I usually have the license plate hanging there by one old rusty bolt and last year's registration and the exhaust pipes dragging on the ground. And the ones I dearly love are the ones with the red cellophane for tail lights. Now they got red backup lights. You don't know if those mothers are coming or going. Mine had these curious little dents all over it, these whiskey bumps. Especially on top. I found out that came from trying to open the car when the keys were locked inside. Mine had a curious character defect, so left headlight looked straight down like that. I thought that was neat because I could see the double line easier. You know, when it'd get foggy. Every night about 10. When the traffic cleared. I got stopped 2 nights in a row by the same cops. I thought it was a different cop the second night because he's talking in a different voice. But, you know, police officers are such masters of understatement. And he stopped me and I said, what's the matter, officer? And he said, well, your headlight's out of focus. Are you kidding? It was shining on his foot. Well, you gotta be cool. I said, what headlight? He said, you've been drinking, haven't you? Oh, sure. I just polished off a 6-pack Cutty Sark and splitting this beer with a buddy of mine. We're on our way home. You know, nobody else is in the car. And that's a big problem when we get to Alcoholics Anonymous because lying works. You know, do you think I was going to tell that judge down in San Diego the truth when he looked at me and he said, Mr. Harbach, I would like you to tell the members of this jury and the court how you could be going 80 miles an hour on the ferry. Well, the truth of the matter, Your Honor, is that I'm an alcoholic and I was in a blackout and I came out of this blackout and I don't know how the hell I got on the ferry anyway. We were going duck hunting at Bear Lake. Can't get to Bear Lake on that goddamn ferry. I found that out. And I didn't know where the hell I was. And 2 things were going on. There was a horn honking and a green light were flashing. Now, a former race car driver, when those things happen, I only know 3 things to do. You just mash your right foot all the way through the firewall, slide your left foot off the clutch, and hang on, baby, you're racing. Huh? I just smashed, Your Honor, I tell you. When the red light came on, I asked him if we'd won. And he said, you bet you did. Just sign here and press hard. There's 3 copies. Now, that would have been the truth. You think I told that to that judge? You're out of your mind. I said, Your Honor, right here, I have a certificate from my certified garage stipulating the fact that the faulty accelerator that was the proximate cause of this disastrous circumstance has been corrected to the complete satisfaction of the Department of Motor Vehicles, and I can assure the court and members of this jury that will never happen again. Oh, well, case dismissed. Well, so this cop says, have you been drinking? I said, are you kidding? Oh, he knows the answer to the question. They give it to him so they can pass the police test. And 2 beers. That's the answer. No matter what they ask you. Any of your friends are out there still drinking and driving? Give them the answer. That's it. 2 beers. No matter what. Says, I'm going to give you a sobriety test. Oh, God, I love sobriety tests. Are you kidding? I mean, if you can fall out of the car at the parking lot of Mammoth Mountain because you're working on a ski patrol, you're up there to rescue people. And that's a 2/5 drive from L.A. You know, and then some Al-Anon rescues you and fills you with a half a gallon of Grenache Rosé to tune you up for the day, you know. About 9 o'clock in the morning, you find yourself at the top of the mountain operating under that kind of handicap, and some fool's nailed a number to your chest, and you're entered in a downhill race. You get through those gates without falling in the early 80s and play somehow, and this fool wants me to stand on 1 foot, put my head back and touch a nose the size of mine. Are you kidding? So I opened the door so hard that the next night he stopped me, he was speaking in a falsetto. Oh, I tell you, the second night he was incensed. He stopped me and he said, you haven't got that light fixed yet. I thought it was a different cop. I said, what light? Did you know damn well what light? He'd made a mistake the night before. He said, after that thing, he gave me a real complicated drill. He said, walk that white line. I said, what white line? And he made a disastrous error. He pointed right at his foot. That's where I started out. right on the instep of his right foot. So the next night he was incensed and said, "You've been drinking again, haven't you?" A little vein on his head was jumping in and out. "The beer. You going to give me another sobriety test?" I said, "I will not." So you got to drive real carefully on the way home from that bar, and on the way you got to stop and pick up a six-pack of Cutty Sark in case guests stop by. All social drinkers do that. Then you get home and you unscrew the top of the bottle there and you turn your TV on and get ready for your favorite program, Test Pattern. And you turn the music on a record player with my all-time favorite recording artist, Ray Charles. You know, the music filled with hope, Born to Lose. It's Crying Time, and the Al-Anon song, Please Release Me. Any Al-Anons here tonight? A couple of brave souls. You need these meetings. You are so sick. I found out their salute, you know. And their prayer is, "God, if you'd only stop drinking." And then we quit and their life's over. You got to run right out and marry another one of us before the nail holes heal up. But I think all alcoholics ought to go to Al-Anon. In fact, I'm coming back in my next reincarnation as an Al-Anon. You know, it's the ideal program, really. You can work the steps and drink. The curious thing that I've noticed is that alcoholics, when they start making 12-step calls and doing 12-step work, many of them revert back into the pre-Al-Anon mode of rescue, save, and repair instead of just carry the damn message with tough love. Okay? So go to Al-Anon. And when you go to Al-Anon, don't be a big deal and introduce yourself as a damned alcoholic either. They'll throw you out. Oh, I love the programs of Al-Anon and Alateen because I've seen them put back together broken and shattered families and broken and shattered kids that no human power could have ever put back together. At 6 o'clock in the morning while you're up like a tiger and ready to go do it again. I get out of bed in the morning at 6 o'clock and I got a high enough blood alcohol content to go to jail 18 times for drunk driving, and I'm wondering if I'll have a little eye-opener. Little bracer there. And noon or at lunchtime, whenever that comes. Whenever that pen flies out of my hand, I got to go and do it again. And I don't know that if I don't go and have a drink right now, that I'm going to start into withdrawal. And I don't know that in withdrawal I may have a seizure. And I don't know in that seizure that I may shatter my spine in 16 places, like one of my very dear friends. And I don't know that in that alcoholic seizure I may very well die as a result of the terminal progressive disease of alcoholism. It wouldn't matter if I did know, because my book tells me that knowledge is no defense against taking the first drink. And I got to run my string out. And finally my string ended up, after an attempted suicide, I went home one night and decided that we'd kill me. I went upstairs and dug my .45 automatic out from under my pillow. I kept it there because they were after me. You don't have to be paranoid to know they're after you. And I qualified expert with a .45 automatic. I hit what I aim at, and I jacked a shell in the chamber ear to hammer back, took dead aim between my eyes, and blew an $80 mirror off the wall. Scared my tenant next door so bad he ran right out and joined AA. 6 years later. I finally ran out my string. I came out of my last alcoholic blackout, and I was in the intensive care unit of St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. They didn't have any programs for alcoholism in those days. It was sometime in the latter part of March of 1968. And I looked up at my doctor. He was crying. I could tell because he was getting me all wet. And I said, "Why are you crying, Doc?" And he said, "Well, because, damn you, you've killed yourself." They're so dramatic. That kind of piqued my interest because I figured he was talking about me. And I said, "Well, how did I kill me? And why are we talking if I'm dead?" You know, death doesn't scare an alcoholic of my caliber. It would have been a welcome alternative to the kind of life I'd been leading for a long, long time. In fact, I sat down across the table and talked to death 6 times in my life, just like I'm talking to you tonight. Now, I know what it's going to be when I die. You know what it's going to be like? I'll tell you, I got 3 prayers if you're new. I pray to God that you can keep coming back and listening to the music until you can understand the words. Listening to the music of alcoholics may be for the first time able to laugh at themselves. The healing magic of the laughter and the love of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new, I pray to God that you can just keep coming back and put your hand in ours. Because we've been there and we know the way. But hang on real tight and it'll be okay. If you let go, we're going to lose you. We don't want to lose anybody. Not if we can help it. The 3rd prayer is a really hard one. I pray to God that you can just keep coming back and letting us love you until you can learn to love yourself. And those are 3 prayers those old-timers gave me a lot of years ago. And when I die, I think it's going to be just that way. I think someone that's gone before me is just going to put their hand out and they're going to say, "Ted, put your hand in mine and come with me. Because I've been there and I know the way. And it'll be okay. And hang on real tight. And don't let go. Because we're never going to lose you. Not ever." To see, for me, life is simply a bridge between birth and death. Some of them are long, some of them are short. Some of them are smooth and some of them are rough. My job today is just keep my bridge in as good a repair as I can and open each door on that bridge that represents the next day and see what the surprise is. At the end of the bridge, there'll be another door because there was one at the beginning of it. Because everything in life is the beginning of something else. And we're taught that it's all different. We're taught that everything's the end of something. The end of a pregnancy, the end of a birth, the end. But it's all just the beginning. And so it isn't any big deal. And I didn't have that philosophy that morning in that hospital. I just flat didn't give a damn, and I'll tell you why. Because when he told me what was wrong with me, he said this. He said, "You got it all now. You got alcoholic gastritis, hemorrhagic pancreatitis. You got cirrhosis of the liver. You got 2 ulcers that are hemorrhaging. Your blood pressure is 60/40, and that's why I didn't care, because 60/40, for those of you that don't know, is serene. He said, "We've pushed 7 pints of your blood type, and the bank's empty, and that's the name of that tune, and that's why you're dying, and besides." I said, "Wow, is there more?" He said, "Yes, if you don't promise me you'll never drink again as long as you live, I won't even treat you." He said, "I promise." I've memorized this. I promise. Never again. 10 days later, I was drunk again. He told me I don't know how to do that anymore. And I came off that last drunk. I was sitting right in the middle of a skid row of my very own design, the unfinished concrete basement of an old beat-up house hanging on the side of a cliff in Silver Lake. The Golden Boy. I had drank up $2 million construction companies. I had alienated everyone near and dear to me. I had compromised every ethic that I grew up with. I had lost my dignity and my self-respect and had become less than a lower companion. I had become an animal. And everything was broken. Broken dreams, broken promises, broken hearts, broken homes, broken businesses, broken bank accounts, broken laws, broken cars, broken mind, broken body, and a broken soul. And it was all over. Sitting there on the side of my bed that morning, I cried out to the God of my childhood, and in my hour of direst need, he heard me. And the only word I recall is the word remember. And I remembered. I remembered a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that I'd been to, and I can't tell you how long before it had been. So I used to come to your meetings regularly, about once every 2 years. But one of those early meetings I went to, I heard one of those crapheads from the podium say, well, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we just don't drink. Well, big damn deal. I had not drank for 2 whole weeks in 23 years, and life was unacceptable. And I couldn't do the one thing I wanted to do all my life, was just step out easy without that booze. That's all you did in Alcoholics Anonymous was just not drink. Why? Pasadena. Besides, I went to the wrong meeting, I guess. So I went to a meeting, and it was an old Salvation Army Hall or something, I don't know. And you were all just the way I thought you would, old. I mean, some of you were 40. You all lined up around the side of the room there with your heads in your hands, and life was over. And there was some skinny little broad standing up back of the microphone, and she was turned sideways, so I didn't know she was there for a long time. Finally, she turned around, and I thought, my heavens, that'd be like making love to a gunny sack full of antlers. And then in this reedy little voice, why, she said, if you want what we have. Are you kidding? Hey, if you got anything, lady, hang on to it. You need it more than I do. Keep coming back. You bet, baby. Sitting on the side of that bed, I remembered a different meeting. And an old-timer came up to me and he said something like this. He said, Ted, I don't believe you're serious about this deal called Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, I think you're just chipping around with this program. He said, I think you're going to go have to get drunk some more and get beat up out there on the street until you can surrender. Until you reach a bottom that's necessary for every alcoholic to satisfy the admonition laid down in chapter 3. And that bottom is necessary for each one of us, and it's different for each one of us. A bottom, nevertheless, either mentally or morally or socially or physically or financially or spiritually, beneath which you cannot go. And he said one day when you reach this bottom, I pray to God that you'll remember a magic place where you can come, where he said, I absolutely promise you that you can find a way of living your life comfortably with unsolved problems without ever having to drink again as long as you live. And where I promise you, he said, you will end up meeting people that will mean more to you than the members of your very own family. Because when you need these people, no matter how long the day or dark the night, when that heat's on, they'll be there. And they'll be there just for you. And they'll be there for only one reason, because they care. And they call it Alcoholics Anonymous. And in this magic place, I promise you, he said, that you can find a God of your very own that you can take with you wherever you go. So you need never be alone again, as long as you live. And they call it Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I came back to a little park on Roxbury in Beverly Hills where I grew up and used to play as a kid. And that's where I found those old-timers that walk the walk and talk the talk of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it seemed to me that they wore their sobriety like a crown. And they were doing the one thing that I'd wanted to do all my life. They were just stepping out easy. But they were doing it without taking any mind-altering chemicals or drinking any alcohol of any kind. And somehow in the madness of insanity that was to be mine for a long time, I wanted what they had. And I came back. That night when I left that meeting, It was April Fool's Day, which is a good day for me, of 1968. 1968. As I left that meeting, my God looked down on me, and he removed the obsession to drink alcohol from me forever, never to be returned. And I feel tonight I know just a little bit in part why that happened. That happens to about half of us, I understand. If that obsession to drink has not been removed from you yet, I pray to God that you can hurry on with the program and reach the point where it is promised that it will be relieved before the test comes. And the test is in the book. So hurry on, because the test says that there will come a time in the life of every alcoholic where there will be no mental defense against taking the first drink. None. That when that time comes, and it has come many times for me in the years that I have been sober, my sobriety will be contingent upon my spiritual condition. And my spiritual condition will be contingent upon two things: whether or not I am trying to practice the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous in my daily affairs, and whether or not I am trying to keep my spiritual house in order. And my book says that if I am trying to do those two things on a daily basis, I need never fear drinking again as long as I live. You may add one day at a time if you wish. However, there's two hooks in that statement. You have to know what the principles are and have put them into practice before you can keep on practicing them. And you have to have gotten your spiritual house in some kind of order before you can keep it in order. And the way that is done, they told me, is through the 12 steps. And so I went to the old timers to find out how those 12 steps work, because I'm an academic genius. An academic geni read the white parts of the book instead of the black print. And we analyze instead of utilize. You hear them up these podiums all the time. You know, they say things like, I do step 1, 2, and 3 every day. God, it sounds so good. What they're telling you is they haven't started to begin to do anything. I do step 3 every day. You know, that's like sitting on the side of your bed and saying, I don't know why I'm starving to death. I'm willing to eat. I want to tell you, when I came around this deal, the meetings were the program, because that's all they had. Now the meetings are a bunch of two-step gurus. You know what a two-stepper is? Admitted we were alcoholic and then tried to carry this message to the alcoholic who still suffers. First half of 1, the last half of 12, ain't nothing in between. You go to them with your guts hanging out, your brain exploding, you ask them what to do, and they say, turn it over. Well, I turned it over, then I took it back, and then I turned it over, and then I took it back, and blap, 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 and I don't know what the hell they're talking about. How do you turn it over? I don't know, just turn it over. John, I'm down, and I know what's wrong. You don't have working your program. Hold on, just work it. Give me a hard, Jerry Smith. What? I know how to do that. What program? So I went to the old timers that knew, because they were walking the walk, not just talking the talk. It says simple. Very simple test. Programs between pages 1 and 164 of this magic book, including the doctor's opinion at the beginning and the appendix at the back, and that's all there is to it, and there isn't any more. And all the rest of the printed matter and all the pamphlets and all the rest of that stuff just for discussion meetings. Where they discuss it instead of do it. And share it. And talk about it. We're going to discuss the big book tonight. Tonight we're going to discuss the word nil. You know, I got to tell you, unless you're an academic mathematician, you cannot do anything with zero. The result will be nil until we let go absolutely. People that let go, it reminds me, I used to do a lot of rock work and ice work in the ski patrol, and I got an idea of the way most alcoholics let go. If you let go of a 100-foot belay rope, the way most of us let go, I promise you, you'll burn your hands off to the shoulders. Because what you're talking about is a 100-foot flip. 164 pages, that's all there is to it. And the meetings before the meetings, the meetings after the meetings, the roundups, the conventions, and the intergroups, and all that stuff, that's just the fellowship. And I thank God for the love and the support of the fellowship that allowed me to keep coming back until I could find my way. The unconditional love that I found in the fellowship. My God, what a deal, what a gift. And he said, as far as the steps are concerned, that's very simple. Steps are divided into 3 parts. First 3 steps are becoming willing to turn your will and your life over to the care of God. The next 6 steps are how you turn it over. And the last 3 steps are how you keep it turned over for the rest of your life. And that's all there is to it. And you work all 12 steps every 5 minutes if you want to. But it isn't necessary. And so that's the way they do this deal. You know, this gal in Pasadena ever hears me again, she's going to kill me. But I heard her a short time ago, and she said, she was up at the podium sharing her first year birthday, and she said, now that I'm 1 year old, my sponsor tells me that I can take step 1 in depth. Oh, Jesus. I don't know what book they're reading. According to my book, you don't even have to take step 1 and 2. But that's what it says. Right after that part of chapter 5 you heard read tonight. It says, made clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. Not found, just sought. Right? The next sentence says, being convinced of this, we were at step 3. If you're not convinced of those 3 ideas, go get drunk. Don't waste my time. Go get beat up out there in the streets some more by whatever it is you do, by be hip, slick, and cool. Till by God you're ready to surrender to the admonition laid down in chapter 3, which says, we learn. And don't ever confuse learning with what goes on up here. That's just nothing more than a computer. And you get the same thing out of it you get out of any computer. Garbage in, garbage out. You know. I'm going home and think it over. With what? Learning is experiential. Right? You never learned anything until you got the direction straight and started practicing it, until you got good at it, and then you learned it. You know, you didn't become an alcoholic without a lot of practice. Or a typist, or a pianist, or a computer programmer, or a ditch digger, or you know, put some huckleberry up against a professional ditch digger sometime you want to see a guy die fast. They've learned, they know, see? They know. And you either know in this life or you don't know, and there isn't any in between. So in chapter 3 it says we learn, and that's experiential, by getting beat up, that we had to fully concede that total and absolute surrender to our innermost self, that's as far as you could go, that we were alcoholics, is the first step in recovery. Now there's one other way that you can learn. And that's what the textbook is for. And the reason I call it a textbook is because that's what it says on page 1. This has become the basic text of, you know. The first 4 chapters of this textbook and the doctor's opinion are designed for one purpose, and one purpose only, and that's to convince you of those 3 ideas. That's what it's for. To explain the exact nature of our disease, right? So that we know what we... You know, most people think the program in Los Angeles starts on chapter 5. This is how it works. It's like taking a kid and putting him in math class for the first time in his life, and his teacher says, okay, turn to chapter 5, we're going to do algebraic formulas. He doesn't know how to add 2 and 2 yet. That's chapter 1. Right? Being convinced of this, we were at step 3. I like the psychiatric definition for step 2, and this may help some people. Came to believe that power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It says came to believe. It doesn't say anything about believing. Right? I like the psychiatric definition of sanity, which is this. Sanity is the maximum amount of honesty that any human being can acquire at any given point in their life. Therefore, 100% honesty equals 100% sanity. And that's why they call it a program of rigorous honesty. Because the more honest I become with myself, the more sane my thinking becomes, and the more sane my behavior becomes. But we do it in reverse, like everything. Because we can act our way into sane thinking, but we cannot think our way into sane acting. And so we keep testing with these old-timers on the honesty, and they just keep looking at us and say, yeah, if your lips are moving, you're lying. Being convinced of this, we're at step 3, then you turn the page over if you still have the strength after that, and there's a prayer for step 3, and the way you do step 3 is in the bathroom. And you lock the door and get in the shower, turn the lights out and pull the drapes and get on your knees, because it's not cool for an alcoholic to be on his knees. It's suggested it's done with another person, and when somebody asks me to be their sponsor, that's what we do, first thing, step 3, because we're already at step 3, right? And then if you still have the strength after all of that incredible effort of becoming willing, and you turn the page over, it says, the results that we experience at this point will be short-lived. And that's not very long. Unless followed at once. And that's rather soon. By a person with fearless moral inventory. So I said, well, how do you do this deal? He says, you turn to the directions, craphead. Need a list. Now it appears in the example in the book that it goes from left to right, and that's, I think, an Al-Anon influence. They make lists from left to right to confuse us so we have to drink and they can rescue us. But any normal person makes one from the top to the bottom. And Joe and Charlie from Little Rock have the greatest guide to a 4-step inventory that I've ever seen. Blank piece of paper. Got 4 columns on it. They say, made a list of everybody you're pissed off at, that's all. They use the word resentment, because they were sophisticated. Now, how long is that going to take you? I see some of the damnedest inventories I've ever seen. Great, huge, long biographies done with word processors with spelling programs in them. You made a list. How long would it take you? 5 minutes? Doesn't matter if you get them all down there, because later in the book it says more was going to be revealed anyway, so write them all down. And, you're trapped here. There's no way out. You have to get it perfect. Well, fine. If you want to get it perfect, put your name at the top of the list. You're probably angry at yourself and you aren't anybody else in the world anyway. Then turn to column 2. I'm angry at my mommy because she put me on the potty backwards. The reason why, see? We're wronged by a lot of people. We wronged a lot of people, too. Put them down, the reason you're angry. Which points out my fear of economic insecurity or financial insecurity, social security, threat to my social security or physical security or sexual security. The bottom line for any character defect is fear. That's what's at the bottom, if you can get there. Okay. It's always fear. And if somebody can tell me of something underlying a character defect beneath fear, I want to know about it, because I don't know about it. See, total depression is fear. It's self-pity, which is the fear of success. But we can't admit that. Who's afraid of success? Well, I'll tell you who's afraid of success. Just give an alcoholic a compliment and you'll find out Nice looking suit you have on tonight. Oh, well, it came from the Salvation Army. Got a cigarette hole here. It's not my size. The lapels are too wide, and it's worn out on the sling here. It's got a big spot over here. And then in the last column it says, which points out my character defect, which is. Character defect or shortcoming, or, Bill Wilson used about 5 different words synonymously. I've been to these discussion meetings, I heard 1 hour one time they sat there and said, well, now we want to know, we're going to discuss why Bill used character defects in one step and shortcomings in the other. The reason he did it was because he read a book on how to write a book. It says you don't use the same sentence in 2 succeeding paragraphs. But this thing is so simple it escapes all of us. I have come to the conclusion that there is a direct proportion between the IQ and intelligence of an alcoholic and his difficulty with the program. I'm so smart I almost died. You go to some of those meetings I go to, the long sermons meetings, and the ones over on the east side, give them the directions and see what happens. They got the IQ of about 6, right? Work this up, okay. Made a list of all the people. That's George and Sam and Tim. You got it done in about 10 minutes. Why were you angry at it? Well, that pissed me off because I was, Okay. Well, what did that threaten? Well, it's going to take all my money. They call it financial insecurity. Steal my bread means the same, And then you go and share this whole deal with somebody that doesn't know anything, and he says, oh, that's wonderful, now burn it. And then you turn the page over and it says, referring to our list, you do the same thing with fears, and I had millions of those, because I wasn't afraid of anything, I was terrified of everything. And the same thing with sex, and it's all explained right there. And then share it with some huckleberry, and then what you really want to watch for, those of you that are doing inventories and listening, is a pattern. I heard a great line by Eugene O'Neill, and it goes this way. There is no present, and there is no future. There is only the past, repeating itself over and over and over today. And my job with the program is to amputate that pattern so that it interferes with my life no longer. Because I have to promise you I've gone through everything sober and repeated all of those patterns that I repeated while drinking. And that's what you want to look at. And after you share it with somebody, why? Come home and turn to what I believe is the most magic page in the whole book. In my book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which, by the way, is my only authority, and I find I need no other, why? There's a promise on every page, at least one. There's 2 promises in the 12 steps, one in step 11 and one in step 12. On page 164, vision for you. And the definition of a spiritual awakening, why? Promises on page 83 and 84, 12 of them. But on page 75, there's 10 promises. And if you don't remember anything I've said tonight, I hope you remember page 75, because I don't hear many people talk about it. See, it's the beginning of the whole deal. And you can't get to it by turning to it. Because it's sandwiched right in there, just exactly like what it is, a gift from God. Sandwiched right in between step 5 and 6. It's the beginning of the whole deal. It's a living, breathing definition of sobriety. I'm going to tell you 4 of the promises, unless you go find the other 6. It says on that page 75 that we're preparing an arch through which we will walk a free person. I'm free today by the definition in my book, which says freedom is doing what I have to do because I want to do it. And I don't have to do anything in this world that I don't want to do. I only have to go to the bathroom if I don't want it. I just stand here and let it happen. Of course, I have to be willing to accept the responsibility for all my behavior. It goes on to say that if the obsession to drink alcohol has not been removed prior to this point, it will most certainly be relieved now. Hurry on. lest the test come before you're ready. It goes on to say on that page, all fears will fall away. Can you believe that? Well, you won't know that till sometime later on in this deal you screw up the courage to take the risk to do the one thing that absolutely terrified you and find out for yourself that that fear is gone. You didn't have anything to do with it. Well, you did it, all right. Right here. 8 years on this deal, I found myself looking straight down over the parapet of a 27-story building, something I'd never been able to do in my life, because I have terminal acrophobia, fear of heights. And I found out in one glorious instant that all fear of heights had been removed. Once again, I could return to the mountains of my childhood and climb into those gondolas and those chairlifts with no fear of height without taking any mind-altering chemicals or any alcohol of any kind. Only this time was a little different, because I could take my little 5-year-old daughter with me, who was 5 then. She's never seen her mom or dad take a drink of alcohol. It's a gift, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. 12 years on this deal, why? You people asked me to be the opening night speaker at the Palm Springs Roundup, and I stood up in front of over 3,000 of you guys and you gals, and in one glorious instant I realized that all fear of people, places, and things had been removed from me forever, never to be returned. My God, what a gift. What a gift. For someone that was terrified of everything. I couldn't stand up in front of a group of over one before Alcoholics Anonymous. I avoided like the plague anything that had to do with public speaking all my academic career. I would rather take an F and tell a professor the work was not done than stand up here and suffer the risk of your ridicule or laughter. It goes on to say on page 75 that we will sense the nearness of God, and we will feel as if we are on the broad highway with our Creator. You will have brushed the face of God. You will have established a conscious contact with the power greater than yourself, all right there on page 75. Plus 6 more promises. Hurry on, for God's sake, lest the test come before you're ready. And when it comes to the amends, why, put your name first on that list, because I found out it's an inside job. I can't give away something I don't have. When I finally became willing to ask my God to forgive me, he did, because as Chamberlain used to say, I'm one of his kids and he loves me. And he did, and only then I could forgive you, and only then could I ask you to forgive me. If someone's died that you'd like to make amends to, why, there's a way to do that too. Sit down and write them a letter in the first person, just like they were there. Because I've got to promise you, there's a magic that happens between the pencil and the paper that'll never ever happen between the mind and the mouth. And I don't know why that is, and I don't care, because knowing why is the booby prize of life. Sit down and write all of those things you always wanted to talk to and somehow never had time. In the first person, just like they were there, because they could be. All those emotions you always wanted to share and somehow never could. In the first person, just like they were there, because maybe they are. And when you're finished, go some quiet place. You can go to their grave, but it's not at all necessary. Go some quiet place and read it out loud in the first person, just like they were there, because they could be. And when you're finished, burn it. And I promise you a magic that, like everything, you'll never experience until you try it. And you can do that over and over. And now it all doesn't make any difference anyway, because you're trapped in step 10 for the rest of your life. First 3 steps are becoming willing to turn your willing life over. The next 6 steps are how you turn it over. The last 3 steps are how you keep it turned over for the rest of your life. Well, I almost forgot on the amends. Charlie shared something that's interesting. He went to his sponsor with his amends, and he said, there's some people on here I'm never going to make amends to. His sponsor said, well, I understand that. But he said, it sounds like you're letting those stand the way you're making any amends at all. Yeah, you're damn right. If I'm not going to make amends to one or 2 of them, I'm not going to make amends to any of them. So, he says, well, now, wait a minute. He says, there's probably some people that you'd like to make amends to right away, aren't there? Like your family, and your folks, and your brother and stuff. Well, yeah, that's true. Well, let's put them down on the paper in column 1, under now. And then he says, so he wrote those down. He says, no, there's probably some people that You're going to make amends too a little later, aren't you? Well, yeah, I suppose. Well, let's put those down under later, under column 2. He said, and then there's some people that you may be going to make amends to, aren't there? I said, well, yeah. Well, let's put those under column 3, under maybe. And he looked at that deal, and he says, well, there's 3 names left that you're never going to make amends to. Is that right? That's right. He says, well, let's put those down under column 4, under never. He wrote them down, and Charlie reported not too long ago, he said, as the years went by, why, the laters became nows, and the maybes became laters. And the nevers, well, they've all been taken care of. They've all been taken care of. To see, it says wherever possible, not whenever. When is the time, where is the place? Wherever possible. There's no escape from the book. Not all doesn't matter anyway. Because in step 10, you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. If you miss one, it ain't going to work. So when I feel the pain in here of doing it my way, I kind of got an idea of the difference between my will and God's will today. Mine hurts, his doesn't. So when I feel that pain, I got to write about it. And make a little package, and then I got to share it with one of you, and now it's not so heavy. Now I can take it to my God in step 7 and ask him to help me with it. Every time I do that, whatever's bothering me, if it comes back, it doesn't come back as often. If it bothers, it comes back, it doesn't have the power it did before. And if whatever it is comes back, it doesn't last as long. And if it comes back, I just got to keep writing it until finally one day it's relegated to the scrap heap of serenity. And that's how you turn it over. That's how you turn it over. Separated by the little word and, when we're wrong, probably admitted it's steps 8 and 9. I don't need that step much anymore. Because I found out for me that love is never having to say you're sorry. What that means to me is that I love every one of you from the bottom of my heart to such an extent that I would never intentionally do or say anything that would harm any one of you in the least way. But not being perfect, if I should step on your toe in error, I have step 8 and 9 in the last half of step 10 to take care of it immediately. And so in step 10, I have the magic God-given tools that I dare not leave my home any morning with lest I need them during the day, that are absolutely guaranteed to allow me to live my life comfortably with unsolved problems. And that I need not live any longer with any guilt, shame, fear, or resentment, not one instant longer than the distance between a pencil and a piece of paper and a loving heart of Alcoholics Anonymous, because my God is with me all the time. And that's how fast it can work. And the morning I just choose to stay in bed and turn the electric blanket all the way up to Mother. Why? Not get out of bed until the whole world apologizes. Why? I know what's sitting right by me on that bed, or on that bedside table, is a flashlight, a pencil, a piece of paper, and a damn telephone. It rings at 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes when you get those mystery calls. You ever got one of those? The only thing that's intelligible is the first 2 words. Hello, Ted. You hear the bartender screaming for last call, and the glasses clinking, and the jukebox winding down. Step 11, one of the promises comes true. Thought through prayer and meditation to improve the conscious contact that you made somewhere back there between step 5 and 6 when you brushed your face to God. Praying only for His will for us and the power to carry that out. In step 12, another promise comes true. Having had a spiritual awakening defined as a personality change sufficient to recover from the disease of alcoholism. That's it. We tried to carry this message, the message of how we have this spiritual change, this spiritual awakening, this personality change to the alcoholic, and practice these principles, the principles of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, because that's how it works, H-O-W. And if you've got enough honesty to admit that maybe you've got a little problem, and just enough open-mindedness to think that somebody else just might have a little better idea how to do it than you, and just barely enough willingness to try it, you can make it. And the principle of humility. And I like the definition of humility in my big book. For God's sake, no longer find it necessary to confuse humility with humiliation. We did that long enough. Humility is Aristotle's definition, the great Greek philosopher, in the big book. Humility, very simply, the willingness to become teachable. The willingness to become teachable. And when I became willing to allow you to teach me, I found a way of living my life that I never dreamed possible, never dreamed existed. And practice these principles in our daily affairs. And so I pray to God tonight that each one of you can keep coming back and listening to the music. I pray to God you can come back and hang on to these people, and I pray to God you can just let them love you until one day, maybe, it'll happen for you like it happened for me. And I was standing in front of a mirror one morning, and instead of seeing the enemy, as always, for the first time in my life, I saw a friend. Someone that I could walk down the street with my head held high and my shoulders back, once again a useful and decent human being. Someone that I could spend long times with because he'd become my friend. And one morning, looking at this newfound friend, I heard myself whisper very quietly just to myself, I love you. In that moment it moved the longest distance known to mankind, from the head to the heart, from academic to experiential. And I was happy, joyous, and free with me, the way I was when I got here, the way God always intended me to be, before it all got broken and shattered along the way, somehow. And I was whole once again. And I know who I am, and where I'm going, and what I'm about. And the promises have come true. And so I pray to God that each one of you can do that, and get a sponsor, and take the steps that are necessary to create in you a conscious contact with a power greater than yourself, and a spiritual awakening exemplified by a personality change in which we no longer react to reality in the way we used to, because it just isn't necessary anymore. And if you keep doing that, why? Maybe one day I'll get real lucky and I'll be sitting out in the audience. And maybe one of you will be up here getting a birthday cake. And maybe if I get extra lucky, why, I'll see a tear in your eye and I'll hear a catch in your voice. And then I'll know that you know. See, I'll know that somewhere along the way you fell in love with a deal called Alcoholics Anonymous. Somewhere along the way you brushed the face of God. And somewhere along the way, you found your way, and the heavens became gentle somewhere along the way. I love every one of you from the bottom of my heart. And God bless you and keep you. And live every day as if it were your last. And love every moment of every day, because there just isn't time to do anything else. Thank you.